Hand me those papers I printed out. No, yeah. All right. Hey, you guys. Welcome to the live feed. Uh, Today we're going to talk about, I don't know, genomic approaches to treating anxiety and depression. Sorry. So, last time we talked, last week we had a little technical glitch. But other than that, we've been talking about more kind of resistant to treatment, anxiety and depression, and how we go about looking at those things, diagnosing, and even treating very differently from what's typically done. And for the most part, when you look at anxiety and depression, most people just kind of treat from medication standpoint. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that and kind of touch on some topics that people ask questions about. And then we'll talk about some success cases and how we used those kind of mechanisms to actually achieve greater success than they did in all their years of chronic management, right? So now this is October. Our topic for October, do you know what it is?
Hormones?
Yeah, hormones. All right. So we've gotten a lot of requests, mostly from Holly, about doing a month on how to balance our hormones naturally.
That is not true. It's just for me. There have been several ladies out there who have supported me on this, and I'm here for you, ladies.
That's right. So we want to talk about eating for hormones, how not to exhaust hormones, and that's probably the biggest part, is not exhausting hormones. So we'll spend a lot of time on that. We'll talk about studies and research, and basically physiology and even nutrition of how we cause these things and how we reverse these things. So we'll have several different weeks, and then we'll have a case study. I think we'll do like a little maybe meditation. We might pre-record it, we might do it live, but have like a meditation live feed, or maybe record it. But we'll see what we can do. So that's another thing about how to balance your hormones, is not exhausting them, about resiliency. So this is the last one for our anxiety and depression thing, and month. And if you guys have stuff you want to hear, let us know. I mean, we get lots of really good, interesting responses. So I want to talk about a few things about kind of how we're treating things today first. So we have a few questions and detailed questions. And so one of the things I looked up was an article in Psychiatric Times. And this is a big publication for talking about all kinds of things about psychiatry and anxiety, depression, all the way to bipolar and schizophrenia. But for anxiety and depression, they had a really great article just a few years ago. And it was about anxiety it was drug-resistant anxiety and depression. So these people have done all the medications, still more depressed, right? If you look at the latest Abilify commercial, it says that 70% of people who start antidepressant therapy end up more depressed. And that's a big problem, because not only are they more depressed, but then they end up with more medication like Abilify, which is an antipsychotic. So you start out with a little depression, now you're psychotic. So in that study, they talked about 50% of patients who begin treatment with an antidepressant never even respond. And when I did my psych rounds, it was very much like that, where it just seemed like a crazy crapshoot for what we were doing with patients. You'd have someone that responded, a lot of people who didn't, some people got worse. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I remember at the very end of my psychiatric rounds, the director of the hospital was asking me about this, and what did I think about doing rounds at his place. And I said, it just feels like a big crapshoot. Like, we'll just take this med, and see what we got. And it just seemed crazy to me. And that's why I told him, I said, no disrespect, but it seems crazy to me. And he said, yep, that's exactly what it is. He said, we just have no idea what we're doing. And this guy was board certified in psychiatry and neurology, so you'd think that he would know. But knowing what you don't know is often more important, So that same thing of with the Abilify commercial, we see 70%. With this study, they talk about 50%. What's really interesting is they're talking about treatment resistant, and so 50% with maximum dose for 6 weeks at least still were more depressed. And then they did another study where they looked at two antidepressants being used, so two different mechanisms, and usually like Wellbutrin and Prozac or Zoloft or something like that. So they did those at maximum dose, and about 30 to 40% would respond to that. Or I'm sorry, 30 to 40% of those patients still didn't respond to anything. So basically that kind of leaves them without options. And that's where we are a lot of times with patients that come to see us is they are out of options. Or they want a kind of a natural option, which I just had a patient the other day, a new patient, because they went to the psychiatric PA, and they said, okay, well, I don't want to do anything but natural. What can you help me with that? And he said, well, we don't do natural, but we got a person that does down the hall. And so then he marched them down to my office, and then we started with our process. And that's wonderful because so few places will even have that option. Well, okay, almost no places will have that option of doing something natural or non-toxic or things that don't mess you up in the process, but get you that targeted therapeutic effect that you want. Mm-hmm. And so far, we've been really successful at just looking at what we talked about before, genomics and epigenetics and dietarily induced anxiety and depression. So the last part of that study, it talked about one of the mechanisms of failure, and that is what's called, I like to call it as iatrogenic, which means...
I'm listening.
Dr. Cost, iatrogenic drug dependency. And typically what that means is for the people that even maybe it works, they then become reliant on that. And that mechanism is through a process of downregulation. And all the neurotransmitters in your brain, let alone all the rest of your body. I mean, only 5% of serotonin is in your brain. 95% is actually all over your body. It actually helps build bones. So taking antidepressants can actually make your bones weaker. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, they did a study where they were treating mice with antidepressants and their bones all started breaking. And so then they were like, well, let's study this now. And they found out that, when you mess with neurotransmitters like serotonin, you have a global effect in the whole body. And you can cause a lot of problems with that. So that iatrogenic drug dependency is because your body works off negative feedback. Hormones and neurotransmitters work off negative feedback, which means if you trick the body to thinking it has more, it'll make less. So if I take an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor like Prozac or Zoloft, it tricks my brain into thinking I'm making a lot more serotonin than I really am. So it usually doesn't work very well with that. But if it downregulates it, then they keep upping the dose, and eventually your serotonin dependency is now on that drug.
I have a question. And maybe you can get to it later, or maybe you're already going to get to it later, but how do people transition? Say you've downregulated your serotonin or your dopamine production or whatever. How do you transition? You have to find ways to help the body start creating that again, right?
Yeah. So, the body's very resilient. When I was in school, they always taught us, and even clinical rounds, they always taught us that you can't go off those very quickly. You got to titrate very slowly, all those kind of things. But as we've gone through the years, we've had patients that have gone off their medication very quickly, hopefully under their doctor's care, the prescriber's care, and did very well. But every time they've tried in the past to go off their meds, it was horrible because, again, they downregulated their production, they went off, and they had nothing going on there. But what we do that's very differently is we create a scenario where their body is now making those hormones, making those neurotransmitters. They're not overexhausting them. And so if they titrate off those or go off them, their body is more resilient.
Can they titrate and work with someone like you at the same time?
Right, yeah, absolutely. And so, I don't prescribe medication at all. And for people that want to take medication, hey, there's plenty of medication to be taken. For those who don't want to take medication or who want to actually just not be chronically managed anymore, then I'm your guy. But I don't do med management at all. So typically we want the patient to work with their primary or their prescriber. Often there might be like several prescribers, but they need to figure out what they want to do on lowering those doses. But as long as they're managing that and they're tracking the symptoms to where they notice if anything happens. Because again, if you go off of them, and you start to feel horrible really fast, yeah, you might be going off too fast. Now, we haven't seen that before, but it's possible. And so that's one of those things of you want that tracking. Mm-hmm. So that's what we really highly encourage for those kind of patients. Other than that, I mean, most people, once they don't need it, they don't need it.
Yeah. I have another question that I got from someone after one of your last talks. She said, isn't it in the moment of crisis, isn't it faster to take a medication and have a quicker response with the medication? She didn't know exactly what you did or what your protocol was, but isn't it faster to do that than to go the natural route, was her question.
Well, not really. In a lot of things, you might have to be more aggressive with natural. But again, you never want to treat by the chemist pot, even natural medicine pot, that which you can treat by diet and lifestyle first. And so usually it's not that complicated of a process, but most psych meds take like 6 weeks to even become therapeutic.
Okay.
And so, I mean, a lot of people can be like, I'm in crisis. Okay, well, in 6 weeks from now, you're going to be feeling pretty maybe okay 50% of the time, maybe 30% of the time, depending on what studies we're looking at. But that's 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, too, about something like Xanax and valerian. Like, valerian's pretty darn strong. Didn't you say valerian runs on the same pathway as Xanax?
Right, so the same benzodiazepine pathways.
Right,
Absolutely.
so that would be an immediate relief, natural alternative to a pharmaceutical-grade med.
Right, and that would be a non-addicting one.
Okay.
But that's the thing, is like we said, I think maybe in the first talk, we talked about B vitamins, and my gosh, I mean, the very first thing anybody should really try, because again, it helps you cope with a unsustainable lifestyle, is to take, the coenzyme B complex, like Country Life brand, at your health food store, and like methyl B12 under the tongue, lozenge. And those pathways run progesterone, which makes you feel good, dopamine, which makes you feel good, serotonin, which makes you feel good. They help make melatonin through SAMe pathway, which makes you feel great, right? So you feel good, sleep better, and still have the ability to deal with all the stress because those run off B vitamins and things like magnesium. They're very simple pathways, but we get our bacteria from beans, get our B vitamins from beans, greens, and fermented foods. And that's not what most people eat. And so if you don't eat those coping mechanisms that fund those pathways, then those pathways don't work.
Yeah, and that immediate effect would be harder to attain because of a long-standing history of a poor lifestyle choices.
Right. And so usually we want people to start with B vitamins first, even high dose, so they start to naturally feel better, while they can make long-term changes that will make them stay better.
Yeah.
And that's the key. That really is the key. With something like, let me see if I have this up here. So here's the side effects for your basic antidepressants. Agitation, shakiness, anxiety. So if you're anxious, you can take the pill and have anxiety. So that's great. Flu-like symptoms, so that's great. Indigestion, stomach aches. So a lot of people have irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. They end up taking antidepressants because, again, the treatment, even for the gut, back in the day for IBS, was just an antidepressant specialized for the gut. But it killed too many people, so they took it off the market. And then came out the new one. It killed too many people. They took that off the market. Then they came out with Zelnorm. It killed too many people. And then they brought back the other one that killed too many people because we needed at least a drug for it. So for those patients that are taking that, it's just like the mesalazine, where its side effect is the same symptoms they're having from the irritable bowel and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So once they're off, it's easy to figure out, okay, do you have this anymore or not? With the antidepressants, for those people then that have those gut problems, that literally will cause those gut problems too. So it'll mimic that comorbidity. And then diarrhea, constipation, loss of appetite, dizziness, disorientation, confusion. So that's pretty awesome. Insomnia, sleeplessness, that's okay. We got another pill for that. And headaches, and this is the best one. So not only have those sucked so far, right? That's all the reasons they came in for the antidepressant, is those side effects. Mm-hmm. And then this is the best one: low sex drive, erectile dysfunction, and difficulty achieving orgasm.
So if you were already anxious and depressed, you're going to feel even more anxious and depressed.
Yeah. Well, for guys too, not me, of course, but so for guys that have like antidepressants and then they can't perform, then it actually becomes like this revolving psychological
spiral
thing. Yeah, and so then even if they get off the medication, you have to like work with them to get that to work right, because then there's that psychological fear that it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. But Paxil is actually one of the things that they use to actually decrease libido in sex offenders. And so, you're taking a medication that's used literally to get rid of the side effect.
Wow.
Or get rid of the libido. And then excess weight gain, that's a pretty common one. I mean, that's probably the number one that people complain about, is the antidepressants made them fat. But really, the antidepressants didn't make them fat. The antidepressants didn't really help the problems. And so maybe it slows down their metabolism a little bit because it messes with the serotonin and other hormones that are outside the brain, like epinephrine, norepinephrine, which then may cause a little bit of more general anxiety disorder, and then they cope with food with that. Heart arrhythmia problems, that's awesome. Muscle twitches and pain and even shivering. So
we're here to give you good news.
That's awesome. Those things sell themselves. I mean, who doesn't look at that list of most commons and be like, yeah, that's worth it.
I gotta get some of that.
So, I'm really surprised. Well, and I was probably more surprised when I first started practice. It was just like, you have that first like really critical patient, and you're just like, this is how physiology works. This should work, and you're kind of biting your nails and just putting on that brave face like you know what you're doing, and then they get better, and you're like, holy crap, it was that easy? Okay, next patient. Okay, this one's even worse. Okay, it worked. And that's what I love is that. I mean, just not causing it is a big issue. So we talked about that one little simple thing. And I've talked to a couple patients this week that have anxiety, depression, and it was just like, oh, yeah, that's probably it, And there was two things with this. One, we talked about if you eat like American, you have your blood sugar, cereal is sugar, milk is sugar, toast is sugar, orange juice is sugar, jam is sugar, and sugar on the cereal is sugar. And so your blood sugar just like rapidly spikes because they're high glycemic. Then you overproduce insulin, your blood sugar drops rapidly. And then you get maybe a little shaky, a little sweaty, but you probably don't because it's very quick. And then your body responds by trying to raise blood sugar back up after that American breakfast, and it uses epinephrine to do that. And then very quickly, you are pumping out fight or flight hormone to deal with breakfast. And so now you might just be like, why do I feel anxious? There's nothing going on. All I did was eat breakfast, and it was part of a healthy diet, according to the box, right? That's what Americans eat. That's healthy. Why the hell do I feel like this? And that patient was like, oh my God, that's exactly me. That's exactly me. And I can't tell you how many patients I have that are like that. Once you explain that basic physiology of how diet causes general anxiety disorder, it's like, holy crap. It really is that simple. And then another one, we're talking about they had a lot of coffee, which coffee just becomes a legal ability to cope with your horrible hormones. Yeah. So, white tea has 15 milligrams caffeine. Stimulates the brain, you get smarter. Green tea, 25 milligrams. Stimulates your brain, works with theanine to make you smarter. Chocolate and soda, 35 milligrams, probably still helps you a little bit. But by 50 milligrams, which is black tea, you start to see a little bit of anxiety or like surge and then a little bit of fall. And again, that's just a cup. That's just one little serving, not
the big gulp.
the double big gulp liter, right? Can't get a liter of soda. And then, so that's black tea, it's 50 milligrams, which is twice as much as green tea. Then there's yerba mate, which is a South American tea that's used for de-stressing, but all it is it's 85 milligrams of caffeine, which is the same as Red Bull. Not double, but a single Red Bull. So a Red Bull is enough to send 22,000 young Americans to the ER for cardiac problems every year.
I saw a video someone posted of a person who drank like 20 energy drinks. It was horrifying. This person's heart looked like it was trying to literally beat out of his chest. I never want to see it again, but it was horrifying.
Yeah.
So if that's one indicator of something that is not very good for the body, that would be it.
Yeah. And that's only 85 milligrams. You know?
Well, times 20. But
yeah. And then if they do like a monster soda, that's 160 milligrams. And what have we not even mentioned one of the most caffeine-rich things? Everybody drinks it. Starbucks.
Oh, well, we were talking about coffee
Coffee,
already.
yeah, okay. All right. Then you have coffee. And coffee has 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine.
Oh,
so there's a really good book called Caffeinated, and it talks about all this. And so 100 to 200 milligrams for a small cup of coffee. Now, it only takes 350 milligrams to cause anxiety. So for most Americans, that one venti Starbucks is enough to cause general anxiety disorder.
And that's just the caffeine. That doesn't include all the sugar.
Right.
Or the dairy.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so it becomes this, added effect there. But you have people that, literally they're drinking a coffee pot of coffee every day just to function because their hormones are just sucking so bad. So there's only so much coping you can do with dairy. There's only so much coping you can do with bread, which both those are full of morphine. There's only so much crack you can get with crack effect you can get with sugar. And after that crack sugar and the morphine bread and dairy don't work for you anymore, then you have to deal with just artificially boosting it with caffeine. Lots and lots and lots of caffeine. And then you have lots and lots of anxiety, but you probably had it before with the sugar too. So that patient was like, holy crap, that does sound like me. And so again, it's a very simple solution for them. Especially if your parents beat the snot out of you and kept you in a cage in the basement for like 7 years and you got some anxiety and depression, yeah, it's probably not dietary at that point. Although, people who keep people captive in the basement tend to not eat very healthy. I found that out because I actually lived in a cage in the basement.
Right. I was going to say nor do the basement dwellers.
That's right. There's people that lived under the stairs, like the movie. So,
there's probably lots of bugs and spiders down there.
That's right. Make a little butter out of them. Cockroach milk is supposed to be the newest, biggest thing. They don't have milk. I don't know how they make milk from them.
That sounds disgustingly not delicious.
All right. Now that might cause anxiety. Cockroach milk.
Just the idea of it.
I bet they serve that at Starbucks too. So that's that dietary induced piece, okay? So if you eat like an American, you drink like an American, yeah, you should probably have anxiety like an American. And when we used to see hormonal dips like in the say 50s, 55 or something like that, women would just be like hormonally depleted. And so, they'd be all anxious and depressed by then. But now we're seeing that at 35. 35 is probably the average where we see hormonally depleted women. So again, next month, we'll talk about that. We'll get everybody all boosted
soon,
back up.
Ladies, soon.
Boosted. So, but that anxiety and depression that comes with that, that's the bad part. So, the side effects are bad enough. A lot of medications actually deplete nutrients, so you have to deal with that. And then, of course, they downregulate your own endogenous production. And so there's that too. And so it's a whole mess that we created. For those who want to get off medication and not be chronically managed, they have to figure out a different way, and that's what we do. And it's very, there's so many gimmicks out. It's so hard. One of my favorite authors is Kelly Brogan. She's a psychiatrist. She just wrote a book about a mind of your own, and pretty sure it's a bestseller, but it's incredible. But all it is she's a really great speaker too. Some people call me the Kelly Brogan with a beard, but
Bearded Brogan.
Bearded Brogan, as they call me around my apartment. That's from The Office, or condo. That's what it's from The Office. Okay. So, one of the things that they talked about also in the Psychiatric Times was what we talked about last week, or 2 weeks ago, when we talked about the genes that regulate neurotransmitters, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF.
BDNF.
That's right. And so there's a gene that regulates that. And we talked about how, if mom's depressed, then baby can be even more depressed because there'll be a hyposecretor, or maybe they'll turn that gene off or something like that. But you always have the ability to change that gene back. But the physiology of that actually means, and so it went in and talked about this. It didn't talk about the genomic aspect of this, but it talked about how you could reverse anxiety and depression by affecting that pathway in the brain. Mm-hmm. And that's where things like meditation and yoga and Tai Chi and purposeful movement and exercise, that's where all those come in. And so as long as we stop messing up things, we have that neuroplastic ability to really drive back to feeling better. And, when you look at the studies, there's all this complexity, but the simplicity is still the same. I mean, we do all this crazy, neurotrophic, neuroplasticity kind of therapy, whether we know it or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Right. And what about, so you do a lot of yoga and that kind of stuff. Do you see a lot of that associated with reversing anxiety or helping people cope with anxiety and depression?
100,000%. I mean, my first experiences with yoga classes were the most holistic sense of wellness and well-being after the class out of any other class that I'd ever had. You can go and work out and feel great and pumped and jazzed and have all this endorphins, but there's something about a yoga class that touches on every aspect of who you are, mind, body, spirit, if you will. And it's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful as all the mind-body practices are extremely powerful. When you're engaging not just the body, but also the mind in the practice, I think that's what makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So.
And that's resiliency. Hey, which I see a lot of people I know on here. I'm glad you guys stopped by, say hi.
Yeah, Brandy, Tiffany, Wendy.
Wendy Schrag, she's from my town.
Brandy's calling you names.
Whoa.
Like prankster.
Prankster. So my pranks, we had a person come into this office. There's 20 practitioners here. I play a lot of jokes and pranks. A lot of hauling out the bottom of cups and stuffing with marbles, and then when they pick it up, the marbles fall everywhere. I've gotten pretty elaborate about some stuff. But we actually had a person come in and talked about how important humor in the workplace is, and how de-stressing that is, and how it's better for bonding and community. And so basically, in my brain, I was just like, yeah, I'm doing a service here. I'm helping my coworkers achieve better sense of less stress.
Through annoying, frustrating jokes in which you have to pick up 50,000 paper clips off of the floor. But we got a good laugh out of it.
That's right. It's more about making the people around that one person a lot more de-stressed. The person not picking up all the...
It actually does. It's a diversion from getting too serious, which is a good thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually, this is affiliated family counselors, so it's this huge building, and there's all these practitioners. But there's so much trauma in this office all the time that you have to hear about with all these patients. That you need a comedy break.
Yes.
And that's what I do.
That's what he thinks he does.
So, is there any questions? So, if you guys have questions,
yeah,
I saw that there was a few.
Just some comments thus far. If you've got any burning questions, whatever's sitting in your gut at the moment, maybe literally and physically, tell us about it. Ask us about it. If there's something we haven't talked about today, or because especially since this is our last talk on this topic, genetic approaches to anxiety and depression, throw them out there.
And it has to be easier than synthesizing a methylated alkaloid. So, something a little easier.
A little simpler.
So, in Psychopharmacological Institute, they actually have a chart of that BDNF. I don't know if you can see it. But it's just basically showing the ability to actually undo neuroplasticity. So you have severely impaired all the way to suicidal behavior and the major depression. And then it says how to get back to respond. So we have all these people that are non-responsive to typical psychotherapy, or not psychotherapy,
medication management?
Psychopharmacology, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they're talking about healthy behaviors, healthy cognition, as a better way to respond to changing that brain structure. So that just reinforces all the stuff that we talked about too. Mm-hmm. And then I have a couple things I wanted to talk about too. A few patients, and so the names and identities are masked quite a bit in this, but
so Angelina and Brad Pitt came to see. Oh, sorry.
Dang it.
Whoops.
You're not supposed to. That's a HIPAA violation. So a actress and another actor that looks like me a little bit. I don't know.
From the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
That's right. The real Brad Pitt, as he's known around my house. All right. So one thing is anxiety is a comorbidity, and we touched a little bit on that. So a lot of patients that have other chronic disorders end up with a lot of anxiety and depression. I mean, a lot of them are coping by eating. One of the worst comorbidities is someone who tends to sick people. Not only are women constant martyrs, so they are always giving everything they have for everybody else to be healthy, but you throw in a sick parent or a sick kid in there, holy crap, they are going to give 120% of what they don't have to that situation. And very quickly, they're going to be anxious and depressed. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that we really have to guard against as people who are caring is your ability to stop exhausting your own self to where you become the new patient. And so that's that resiliency part that we talked about in the other talk, which is it's not the stress that makes us or breaks us, or even exhaust our hormones. It's that resiliency that we have to cope with that stress. And so that's that, if I'm crazy stressed, what do I do to bring it back down? Right? Do I meditate? Do I go for a walk? Do I choose to eat healthier? Or do I watch TV to distract from it and eat Cheetos and
then beat myself up after that for watching TV and eating those Cheetos?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, so, so anxiety is a comorbidity. And basically that's just, you have irritable bowel Crohn's, chronic migraines, and yeah, you should feel pretty sucky, right? And so those kind of depression patients, we tend to just focus less on the depression part and more on the comorbidities, the other things that they have going on. So things like IBS, Crohn's, we just help them get rid of those. And then that anxiety and depression, when we come back and say, hey, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, they're functional at this point. So we see a lot of those patients. I was trying to even think of like several examples, but holy crap, that's like a ton of examples. And so I thought maybe just in general, we would paint that picture for you. But we see that a lot. I mean, just astronomically a lot. And it's so much easier to get rid of the migraines or the irritable bowel or the eczema and just not have that comorbidity of anxiety, depression to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
So in our nation where 3 out of 4 people are chronically managed condition, just don't stop. That's the easier part. So then, we talked about, I think that a couple months ago on the live feed. So you can always go back and watch these on Facebook, the video section of my site. But we talked a lot about this stuff. And so the interesting thing is next month when we talk, or later this month, when we talk about rebuilding hormones, that's kind of like get rid of it, feel better. Here's how you rebuild from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll make a big circle and everybody will get cured just from watching. So one patient, though, was a 34-year-old patient, tons of anxiety to the point she could not function. And she
and not functioning means not working.
Well, she barely functions at work. She still goes to work. Her coworker next to her just she thinks she hates her, which she was kind of a jerk, and so it's just rotting away and festering in her, and her diet is horrible, and she's just at her wit's end, and her periods are horrible, and she's having to take 3 days off of work every time she has a cycle, and then that becomes a stressor because now she's anxious about, am I going to lose my job and that kind of stuff. And for her, again, we started with the B vitamins. We started looking at what she ate, what she drank, and changed those very quickly. So she went from someone who drank a lot of juice, which is sugar, which causes anxiety, to grilled cheese sandwiches, which she was like, hey, I'm getting lots of protein. But that's not good. So then, so she was eating lots of bread, dairy, and sugar, and juice. And we changed those things. We gave her B vitamins, and then we started addressing how to eat for your hormones, how not to exhaust your hormones. And, oh my God, it was like overnight she was just a better person. Not a better person, it's feeling better as a person, right? And I love it because it was very, very simple, With what we're doing with the Genomic project, we're actually going to be testing DNA and genes for these kind of things. But this, again, is one of those cases where we didn't even have to go that far. Mm-hmm. It was so great. And even with anxiety she was having at work with a coworker, we were having her, it's like, okay, well, you have to go past her office. Your heart starts pumping really hard and you start getting anxious. So what are you going to do about that? And she said, well, what can I do? And I'm like, well, can you take the stair, go up the stairs, go down and miss her office? And she said, well, I can, but, blah, 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 blah. So, okay, well, you're going to have anxiety. It's going to go up. What are you going to do then when you get in your office to drive it down? Well, maybe I could do some desk push-ups. I can run in place for a minute. And okay, well, let's just try that. See if you can burn off that epinephrine. And that's all it took for her. It was that simple.
So you can literally burn that off through exercise?
Yeah. And that's where some people with exercise at night, it'll put them to sleep. It'll allow them to sleep deeply. Because if they go to bed with that underlying anxiety, that's fight or flight. You're designed to run or fight. And if you just let that sit there, it just sits there and kind of ferments with you. Whereas if you, do a quick workout, really high intensity interval training, then you burn it off, then you go to bed and go to sleep. You're good.
So when someone tells you to go take a walk, maybe you should go take a walk.
Yeah.
Not get offended by that, because it might actually
That's right.
physiologically help.
Walk it off. That's what I say to my kid. Shut it down and walk it off. So yeah, that's yeah.
Is that lightning happening behind us? I think we got a storm starting.
They kept promising a storm all day, and every patient was like, no storm, no storm, no storm. And now there's a little storm. So maybe we get a storm.
We got a cool background.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a live action natural background.
Right. When the tornado comes, somebody tell us.
Yeah. So then, so we had a 65-year-old patient, and she was crazy stressed, out of her mind, at her wit's end. Nothing was working for her. And, she was to the point of just suicidal every day. And now the meds worked on her, and so they sent her to us and trying to figure out what we could do. And I think it was probably maybe a month of making some change. She was very resistant to change. But, change happens when the pain of your current situation is greater than that pain of change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, for her, that pain of the current situation was too great. And, just everybody was making her cry. Everything was the worst. And, she had some real reasons to be anxious and depressed. But again, her body's not designed to be anxious and depressed. It's just she's giving into that and not feeding the other parts that allows her to be resilient and cope. And so for that woman, she got to the point where she was like, I went to work and I didn't hate my coworkers. Like, that was amazing. That was the big like, wow, that's awesome. And then we did I think we did really, really high B vitamins with her in the beginning. And then again, got rid of all those coping foods, rebalancing the hormones. And with her, it was maybe another month, and she was just like, I feel good. And she was walking now, and she was going to work and enjoying work. And it was amazing turnaround, just amazing. And, I should be more excited about these kind of cases, but if you see them all the time, it's just kind of like, and if you know the physiology, it's still kind of like, of course, right? If you drink cancer-causing chemicals, eat cancer-causing chemicals, rub cancer-causing chemicals, and you get cancer, who's surprised about that? If you feed the body, you eat for your hormones, you don't exhaust them, you should feel good.
Are these people that you worked with, they've gone 100% change, like they've changed everything, and then that's how long it took? Or do you have other people who it takes, they start small or they start slow and then it takes maybe a little bit longer? I was just trying to give people like a realistic idea, not to expect, in our society or even based on how bad we feel, we tend to want to expect that change tomorrow. And I think maybe it might be realistic to...
Well, and that's a very good caveat. I was told when I first started practicing, to always promise people it'll take longer than it really should. And then when it comes fast, you're the hero. If it takes longer, you're still the hero, right? And I did that for a long time, but things really just seemed a lot faster, and you get to the point where you're just like, a few weeks, you should be feeling better. In 6 weeks, you should feel awesome.
Okay.
And after but in the back of your head, you're just like, maybe this won't work. And, we have a handful of patients once in a while that, it takes a while. So, the reality is to say, well, or I guess not reality, but the caveat may be to say, like, 3 to 6 months they should feel awesome. But it's all just dependent on how fast they make those changes.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty aggressive about how we deal with stuff. Because it's like, just cut the crap, feel better.
Right.
And I only had one patient maybe, that was just like, no, this is overwhelming, I can't do it, you're killing me. And like, they just, otherwise people are just like, okay, all right, this is a lot, and then they just make a few changes, start to feel better, and then it's worth the rest of the changes.
But even in that case of the person who's overwhelmed, you could still say, hey, we can back off a little and do some things that you can feel successful at and keep going. Like they didn't have to necessarily quit.
Right.
Yeah. On that, and she's kind of backing this up. Lynn was asking, after years of medicating with antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, how long does it typically take to begin making serotonin on your own again? Which I'm going to assume is the same answer.
Well, so very quickly, if you are eating for those neurotransmitters, which is pretty simple, but again, it's that B vitamin that drives those neurotransmitters. Serotonin comes from tryptophan, which then goes to 5-HTP, then goes to serotonin, and then through SAMe will go to melatonin. And so it should be happening all the time, just super fast. Once you downregulate that process, it usually, I would expect at least a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, something like that, to maybe get that back if you're taking the medication. Because the medication does have, I think, a pretty significant half-life, if I remember, as far as how long it takes to get just half the medication out. And that's why, like antidepressants, they'll take them for 6 weeks, because by 6 weeks they're layering those doses to get to the point where it's saturated. So once you quit that, you gotta start amping back up. But it really shouldn't be all that long. It really shouldn't.
Okay, that's good news.
And and I'd probably be a little indirect, maybe with the answers, like not a precise answer, but everybody's very different in how they respond. But a lot of it's based on what they're doing to fix that.
Yeah, yeah. Can they respond soon enough to not crash further?
Right. Yeah, and that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever had a patient go off, freak out, and then go back on. Mostly people are just freaking out about the idea of going off their meds.
Yeah.
For the first time without symptoms. And there's that shoe that drops. There's this patient, or on NPR this weekend they had a thing about this woman who the light would irritate her skin really bad, and she would just feel horrible and all these things, and then like she's allergic to the sun. And someone convinced her to do really, really high orthomolecular dosing of beta carotene. And then she got to the point where she could come upstairs with all the drapes and sit in the living room during the daytime, and that was a miracle for her. And then she was just like, oh, is this too good to be true? And then she went back downstairs, and then the next day she came back up again, and she was just like, oh my God, I can do it again. And then she started opening the drapes, and she was just like, wow, and then she'd go outside for a little bit. But she was if you listen to her, her greatest fear was that it was too good to be true. And that's typically, the big fear that people have. If I make these changes, what happens if I fall down? What happens if it gets worse? What happens? And so,
That's because of how scary it is to fall down in the first place.
Yeah. And a lot of times, antidepressants are those kind of meds where if you go off of them, people have gone off of them, maybe when they go back on, they don't work the same anymore, and then it becomes an issue. But my whole goal is not to take people off their meds. My goal is to create a situation where you don't need meds. Mm-hmm. And that's just basic physiology and restorative physiology.
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah. I'm always trying to see what they're saying.
Yeah, we had a B vitamins question and appetite stimulating, and I can't find it on my technology, but I think that was the question, was that taking B vitamins stimulate appetite? I'll see if I can find it again.
Taking B vitamins should help your metabolism and metabolic processes, but it shouldn't. Again, it's not going to make you fat, if that's the question.
It's supposed to make you happy, not fat.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
And another really good one, and this again just is a very basic kind of situation. We had this old crusty patient, and he had a lot of kind of anxiety and depression. And so when I was talking to him about, made the dietary changes. I really didn't think he'd be a very good patient. Guys are the worst typically anyways, because they rarely want to do anything to change. And then if they're like an old curmudgeon, it's just like, I was like, I don't know what this dude's doing here. Like, he's not really going to listen to me. And he listened. And, he was just scour on his face the whole time. And I was just like, this is not going very well at all. And so then he came back for the next visit, which we talked about food. And then he came back for the next visit. And I was surprised every single time. I just assumed, like, can I go to the movies when he doesn't know show? Or what should I do? And he would show up. And so then we got to the third visit where we talked about eating for hormones and not exhausting hormones for him. And I talked to him about politics, because every time this dude came in, he would end it by talking about how evil Obama was and how he was the devil and all these horrible things and just all these political things. He was just going off, and it was like, and so then when we went to talk about that, I said, do you realize how visceral your feelings are for this person you don't know? Like, you have all this hatred and strong anger, and you're holding on to all this stuff for something that you can't do anything about, and you certainly can't really, I don't know, personify in him. And so it's just like, what the hell? Give that stuff up. And so
it's not really even about the candidate. It's about how is that anger making you feel?
Right.
What's that doing? That habit of going there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he was just like a boiling pot. And so I said, okay, do you listen to media and watch media that tells you how angry you should be all the time and how everything's bad and how everybody's bad and how if this happens, the whole world's going to go kaput? And he's like, yeah, but you don't understand. And no. Okay, what do you listen to that's positive at all? And he sat there and thought. And he was just like, nothing. So I was like, what do you listen to or see that constantly tells you to be angry and frustrated at certain things? And he was just like,
Fox
News. Everything I listen to, Yeah, it's Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and Beck. And so I was like, come on now. If you have a heart attack because of all this anxiety over things you can't control, who gives a crap what they say? They're killing you, and you are buying into that.
Yeah.
Stop doing that. You're literally, he was seeing me and paying me money because all the crap in his brain that he couldn't get out or hold on to, that was just like rambling around there causing pain. And so we changed. I said, do this. I said, for the next week, if you're going to watch news, watch BBC, British Broadcasting, where it's like, this is what happened, and you make your own opinion. And listen to NPR on Saturdays where they have Radio Lab and Science Friday, and so stuff that isn't political, but it's all brain engaging. Yeah. And then instead of reading murder novels, read something that's technically interesting to you. And again, I was just watching him, and he just looked like, you're out of your mind. Even though he's agreeing, he was like, and he could see it. He's just like, well, I can see your point. Maybe I can see how that can cause this anxiety and lead to that depression. But and he started going off the rails again. And so I was like, dude, come on. So I said, just give it a try. And so 2 weeks later, we saw him again, and I said, you look so much calmer, man. And he said, yeah. I feel calmer. He said, I didn't want to believe it was true, but he said, I listened to Science Friday on NPR, and I felt so relaxed and engaged and mindful, just like you said. And then later that week, I gave in a little bit and started watching Fox News, and I just got so angry again. And he said, I could feel my blood pressure going up. And so he shut it off, and then he started reading a book that he liked, and he could feel him calming down. And that's amazing. I'm absolutely just amazed that he even stayed and listened to me, that he took my advice, and he actually was able to say, holy crap, I get to be a different person now.
But he was feeling bad enough to want change more.
Right.
Than to stay the same.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. And so, with him, with that anxiety and depression for him, it was truly different. And so that's always that thing of finding those kind of missing parts or where people are kind of messing up, and then addressing those issues.
That's unique to their life and their personality.
Because if you think of the same way medication-wise, I drink a bunch of coffee, I get anxious because my hormones suck, and now I use coffee, right? So what can I do? What can you do for me, Doc? I can write you a prescription to mess with your neurotransmitters. Hell yeah, let's do that. How long do I have to do this? As long as you keep screwing it up, right? And so then you have the next patient that comes in. I'm eating cereal and milk and toast like American, and drinking my sodas. Why do I have anxiety? Well, I don't care. Well, what can you do for me? Here's a prescription.
How long do I have to take it?
Right? I mean, holy crap. And then the same guy, when he has Fox News, Rush Limbaugh induced anxiety and depression, well, no problem. Keep watching that and just take this pill. And I don't care if you watch those shows. But if you're anxious and you're watching them and you're depressed and you're watching them, stop watching them. Find something interesting and constructive.
The moral of that story is that you can teach an old crusty dog new tricks.
That's right. Well, almost, sorry. I don't know if that messes with the video or not. I'll have to figure that out.
I don't know.
So, don't be causing the problems. So that's again, that unique thing of saying what is unique about every patient and not cookie cutter mess with your neurotransmitters. And when 70% of those people don't respond, put them on antipsychotics. How long do we have to do that? Until they get tired of it. And one of the things that we see all the time, and even Kelly Brogan, Dr. Brogan was talking about this too, is all those side effects that we talked about, those lead to other medications. And very quickly, you end up with this cascade of medications, and you end up like, we had a patient once, when we were doing surgery, she was a nurse. She was on 30 medications. 30 medications. And even my mentor, who's a board-certified surgeon, he was just like, I have no earthly clue what would happen if we even took her off these meds. Like...
Yeah, that's a hard thing to unravel.
Yeah.
Yeah, a scary thing to unravel.
So, I wanted to give you those examples, very simple examples like that really take away that complexity. And takeaway message for this, for me this week, kind of wrapping all this up, is, we talked about your DNA is not your destiny and always hope and all those kind of things. But I wanted to give you those case studies to show you how unique each person's cause for anxiety and depression can be treated or identified and very effectively treated through lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Just that simplicity. Let alone the genetic studies, the genomic part, even though we're addressing the genomic part, but like hard code testing that. Yeah. So, I see this stuff all the time, and it doesn't ever impress me much anymore. I'm just kind of like, yeah, you'll get better, right? That's what should happen. And if they don't, then I got to figure out why. But I've only had maybe handful over the years that it actually took a lot more, like, man, something's really messed up here. We got to really figure it out. But you're not broken. You're just not broken. Yeah. We live in a broken society that guarantees you're going to be sick and anxious. And that's why America is the number one for anxiety, the number one for depression, because we absolutely guarantee that if you live like us and act like us and drink like us, you will be us. You will be the most anxious and depressed people. Yeah. But you don't have to be.
I think that was going to be my takeaway, is that you don't have to...
I thought she's still in mine.
No,
hope.
No, I was going to say...
She's going to say hope.
No. I was going to say, you don't have to feel badly about feeling badly. Yeah. And you don't have to feel badly about taking a medication because that was your only choice at the time. Right. And you don't have to feel too scared about the idea of just at least investigating and researching transitioning, or the possibility of transitioning off your medication, or at least adding in some new lifestyle practices, nutrition, wellness, positive social interactions, therapy, talk therapy, adding those in to start helping you move toward that goal of holistic wellness. So that would be mine. You don't have to feel badly, so go easy on yourself, because you are part of a much bigger machine. This American machine that you're born into, of a lot of these unhealthy practices. I was going to just plug we had a question about my classes, about our wellness classes here, and you won't be able to see the calendar very well online on our feed here because it's backwards, especially because Dr. G can't hold it still. So, and that he's holding it backward, which helps even less. But we have Tai Chi, we have yoga, we have Pilates, we have our live talks, we have family yoga, we have free yoga. Go to afcwichita.com and click on the wellness tab to get a copy of our calendar of wellness classes. And then come join us. It's $10 a class except for our free yoga. And we've got just a lot of good things going on.
Are they all like that?
What's that, $10?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the classes are $10, $10 a class, except for the free. No, so that's pretty reasonable, especially if you don't have to commit. You can walk in and try something out.
Yeah, that's crazy cheap.
Yeah.
And it's true actual, like, therapeutic, too, which is nice.
Yeah, if you're curious, you know me. Sometimes I'm up at that front desk. You can come in and see me, and I'll talk with you about it and get you signed up.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's awesome. And I not a lot of our patients will, like, transition into meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, but the ones that actually will, holy crap, they're just like, this is great.
It's powerful. People don't believe that it's powerful, and they're maybe a little intimidated or reserved because they don't know what it's about, or they fear that it's religious. It's not religious. Our practices are just extremely practical, science-based, and supported practices for mental and physical well-being.
So what about if they, like, never been to yoga and they don't know the positions and they're going to feel awkward? What is that? What about that?
Anyone can do yoga, and the right yoga teacher will help you do the practices that are right for you, and they'll help you modify. I would say there's practically no one in my classes that can do the things you see on television or online, those amazing poses, including myself. So don't be intimidated by those who make it very doable, very easy, very modified. Especially the Tai Chi as well. I always recommend Tai Chi for those people who are afraid of doing a little more intense, broad movements. So we've got something for literally almost everyone, as long as you can stand up.
And kids?
We have stuff for kiddos. Family yoga on second Saturday. I'm glad you said that, because that's this Saturday at 11. Family yoga for kiddos 10 and under. It's geared towards the kiddos, but parents are welcome to join, and the cost is only for the kiddos. So we have a lot of fun. We sing some songs, and we do some cool poses, and we just make it really kiddo-friendly. So
what if they're 11, but they act like a 10-year-old?
They're out. If they are 11, they are out.
All right.
I'm just kidding. If they're 11, I might make an exception.
All depends if they can pay for the free class.
So, anyway, thanks for joining us again. Was there anything else?
Well, make sure that you like the page or like the feed. Please share it. Again, there's a lot of people suffering. A lot of the suggestions that we have are free, simple things that people can be doing. And, you know, if it goes beyond that, then they need to find someone who does, like, functional medicine or clinical nutrition or something to figure out what that next step is. But, hey, Becky. And, you know, figure out what their unique solution is. And I like that you said the thing about not being, you know, like, down on yourself if you take a medication. My job, and this is true of every doctor, except most doctors have a very big ego, which doesn't translate very well to the patient. But you are the boss. You're the boss. You're in charge. And the situation is you hire an expert to give you their opinion, and then you do whatever the hell you want to do with that information, right? And so there's a lot of, well, I don't say a lot. There's a handful of patients that we've had that are like, I don't want to go off my meds. I want to be on my medications. I don't care about that. I just don't want to suffer while I'm on them. And that's great. I don't care. Take meds, don't take meds, wean off. Whatever patients want to do to get to whatever their goal is, that's the real process that we want to engage into. And so again, don't feel like, oh, if I took meds and I'm a failure, if I got off and then I changed, fell back and I got back on. It's not a failure. There is no failure. The only failure is to not try or to fall down and not get back up. But this life is not about perfection. This life is about process. It's about continuing to slowly improve. And for some people, that's a snail's pace. And some people, it's a rabbit's pace. But who gives a crap? You don't judge yourself off of other people. Do the best you can with what you have. And that's what, when I deal with patients, that's the same thing, is deal with wherever they're at. And so you don't have to feel bad if you're not ready to give up your medication, but you still want to feel great. And so it may be a little bit harder. We have to try a little bit harder. But, we just got to do what we can.
Yeah.
So next week, this is Halloween month. So we're going to be talking about exhausting your hormones. So why is that like an October theme?
Because you're scared all the time.
I am. I truly am. I got 4 daughters and a wife of like 15, 20 years or something. And I still don't know what the hell's going on, right? So we're going to help you get your hormones in balance. Like mood swings, right? They never swing in the good direction, do they? Why are they called mood swings? They don't ever swing back. It's not like, oh, I'm having mood swings. Let's guess. Is it nice or is it bad?
Right.
Right?
Right.
All right. So we'll have some good jokes, too. We'll have fun with this. So I don't have I'll look for the advertisement on the Facebook page, but I'll have the lectures broke down. So we'll probably do maybe 3 or 4 this month, depending on how well we do. And then we have other couple of videos. Hopefully we'll get those done too. Some pre-recorded ones. So thank you guys. Please share this with your friends and family and like it. And I'm glad that you attended. This is great. And I'm glad we can share this information with you. I hope it helps.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Good night, you guys. Which button?